end of the day, what we mean by the word agency, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is helping someone get from where they are to where they want to be, you know, and that is a form of agency. It's not the only form of agency. In this particular instance, when I was a career agent, aka a recruiter,
Mm-hmm.
my sole purpose was to get someone a better deal,
Mm-hmm.
than they had, whatever that meant.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, I was constantly offering objective third parties, objective wisdom from a because when you're making such a critical decision in your life, what you're going to do for a living, how much you're going to make, how you're going to support your
Mm-hmm.
family, that gets personal. It has to, because your personal motivations, what do you want? What are you good at? What brings you joy? What
Mm-hmm.
location are you in? How's your family feel about this? I mean, how much money do you make?
Yeah.
It's a very personal conversation, you know?
Yeah. No, it's actually a great way to start off the talk today, Mark, because you're right. You just described what you do. It was probably one of the most personal things you can do for somebody is represent them, as their agent to decide on a career decision. Probably is big, if not bigger, than a real estate agent, where you're going to make a large purchase and
Yep.
pay on that for 30 years. So there's agents in all different capacities of our life, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they all operate in a slightly different capacity because the one of the reasons I get personal in my career agency work is because I choose to, because it's important to me, because I care about the human being, not just the transaction, you
Mhm.
know. And that's a perfect way for us to differentiate our services because it's true. And most recruiters aren't like me. Most recruiters are transactional.
Mhm.
So I think that's a no, it's good. It's a good I think we clarified some stuff and it sounds like you're a little more comfortable kicking this thing off now.
Well, I think
So,
we already have. I think we're actually, talking about it right now. And if we just start off with what I did for 25 plus years, I owned a sales and marketing agency. So I did sales and marketing for cabinet manufacturers.
mhm.
And by the time it was all done and over, probably close to a dozen of them, throughout the state or the country, and even sometimes in different countries. Uh, and I think, like you said, what inspired us to do the podcast, and even where we go with it now, is something we all wish we had: an agency, somebody that looked out for our best interest in a time where maybe we were too close to the issue or we were too emotional about it. And I think I shared a story with you. I may have shared it a couple times about a very, very good friend of mine, when he was the manager for the time the Seattle Mariners, and he invited me up. I'd been up a few times, and he asked me, he asked me to come up before the game. That's right, because they were playing the Yankees, big game. So a lot of press, a lot going on in the locker room, which his office is right outside the locker room. But then you had just I must have been 50, 60 people, press all around the world, especially
Mhm.
Japan, because it was Ichiro and there's some other big names at the time. King, was it Griffin?
Griffey. Yeah.
Griffey, that's it. Yeah, he was still playing for him. Anyway, he just said something about he came out of a press conference, and I was in his office, and he had also had a meeting with the pitcher. I don't remember the guy's name, doesn't matter. And he just made a comment like, that guy just signed a contract for $35 million, some crazy amount of money, right, to throw the ball over the pitcher's mound. And I remember me thinking to myself, and he would have did it for free, because he probably did in the minor leagues, or pretty close to it, right?
Mhm.
Like the difference between getting paid for throwing that baseball over the diamond is very is there's not much of a difference between a guy in the minors sometimes and a guy in the majors, but there's a big difference in pay. But it wasn't the player that determined his value; it was the agent that negotiated the value based on what it was worth, and the
Yeah,
market determined that. So that's what inspired, again, what we're going to talk about today. And
yeah, I think to kind of, and that's a, starting with the how we formed this idea. And, we've talked about agency for a long time now. We've both been agents and in
Yeah.
different capacities. And, today is the seventh episode that is kind of around the notion of what we're going to deliver to the marketplace here soon for people who are interested, men who are interested in improving their performance, whatever that might mean. And that's we lay that out against our framework. And our framework, again, just to remind people, is the flywheel and the 5 key areas of life that are in the wheel. And at the center of the wheel, from which everything emanates, is the self or the ego. And we're going to talk in future episodes more about all of the selves and the hyphenated self words. And we've kind of concluded, Jim, that self-awareness is how that begins. And then you do some self-assessment or self-evaluation, kind of the same thing. And then you apply some self-accountability to the execution of whatever the plan turns out to be. So that self topic is a big one. And we're going to dig into the details of that later. Today, we're going to talk about agency being the delivery model of the advice or coaching or mentorship or all of the above in each of these 5 areas of life. And, before we started to record this episode, you and I were looking at this word from slightly different angles. And I think what we concluded is there's a couple of different ways that you can define agency. And as a matter of fact, I pulled up the definition of it prior to this. And let me just read it to you and just reiterate that. So an agent is, number one, one that acts or has the power or authority to act, and typically on behalf of another. And the second one goes into that, one empowered to act for or represent another. And the final one is the means by which something is done or caused, an instrument. So, and I made the point or the opinion that, I've been an agent my whole life. I've been helping people find better jobs and then teaching other people how to do that. And so, but I made mention to you that most recruiters, which I was, are transactional. Well, the way I practiced that craft was I got really deep into people's personal lives because I cared and I wanted to have trusting relationships with them so I could be an advocate, which is another potential name for an agent, an advocate, on their behalf. And I could do so almost as if I were them, because I had to take them and go into the marketplace and say, this is who this person is. This is what they're really good at. Here are some of the other parameters that you probably want to know about before you choose to act or not act. And I always suggested, in order to be, whether you're an agent in the cabinet making business or a sports agent or a career agent, to do the job well, which is what we hope to bring to the course, and any services or products we end up developing, is that unique personal touch, which I think makes it easier for everybody to do their job better, So, but, give me your take on agency.
Yeah, again, well, I don't know if it's easier. I think I started to at first. Let's be honest. I think some could say, "Oh, that agent, he's the greedy agent that doesn't do anything but takes all the money." And there's story after story, right, of musicians or famous artists or famous athletes that were taken advantage by their agent. So I think let's start off with the bad side of an agent. And again, endless stories of bad agents that in the end stole all the money or took a childhood celebrity or artist or musician and the kid didn't have anything left at the end of his life, right? So, but I'll just use again my own personal experiences. I mean, I would like to use my closest friends as examples what they did for a living. So I have some very good friends that are in the real estate business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we all paid real estate commissions and go, what the fuck? Why did we pay all that money for a guy basically that drives around in a car showing his houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not trying to justify a commission for an agent. However, I have learned to appreciate the role of an independent person negotiating something that's very emotional, typically for two people, right? A man and a wife or whatever it is. It's not
Hmm.
usually a single person. So without an agent, that would just be a complete disaster if you were trying to, can you imagine trying to negotiate to buy a house directly with somebody, with your wife or
Yeah.
ex-wife in some cases?
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean that's the thing, and I'll let you get back to your story. I just want to interject this before I forget. It's the concept behind why we believe we bring such value to the marketplace is just that. I mean, it's not that you couldn't buy your own house without an agent.
yeah.
It just
Yep.
there's so much work that the agent has already done. The agent has contacts. The agent knows the market. The agent knows the geographic landscape. And all the agent really needs to get from you is what kind of house do you want? What's
Yeah.
important to you?
Well,
You know?
let's mix it up because like I said real estate is one good example of that, right? But they have a fiduciary responsibility when they get their license, when all what they have to do to become an agent, that they're holding a standard that it is your best interest. The decisions are made for your best interest, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's part of it. But there's also the other agents I like to like I every time you hire an attorney, that's really what their job is, right? Not to
Hmm.
be emotional about the case, whether it's you're a defense for a criminal or you're suing someone, you're being sued.
Hmm.
They're not going to get emotional about anything. They look at it simply as the best interest of their client. It's
Hmm.
not just an oath. It's a type of person that can push everything aside and not make it personal and either protect you or go after what's deserved to you.
Yeah,
So I,
yeah,
I
and
think
that person and a good attorney in the domestic court system is going to know judges. He's going to know the rules. He's going to
that's
know
right.
the most probable outcome if we do this versus
Hmm.
that. You
Precedent,
know,
exactly. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's an extremely valuable service, and I can see us, Jim, in the five key areas of life. We bring some clients in, and they're trying to get from point A to point B, and they're stuck, or their performance they just know they could perform at a higher level, and for some reason they can't access that next gear. I can envision operating as multiple types of agents on behalf of that person. I would encourage someone in our course to interact with us and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm up for a raise and I'm going to have to be negotiating my salary. I'd love your opinion on that."
yeah,
Things like that could come up all the time, And I know, hey, or Jim, I know you're not a nutritionist or a health coach, but what's your routine look like? I mean,
yeah,
that's part of the service. We're operating as agents on their behalf, sometimes at their request, and sometimes we want to maybe help them see something that's right in front of their faces, but they can't see it. Maybe there's a limiting belief, or maybe there's a block of some kind, or some subconscious trauma from childhood that, not that we're psychologists, but, these are all of these things that we've both just said, we've experienced, right? From the client standpoint, and as well, many from the agency standpoint. And I throw mentorship in there too. I think mentorship is a form of agency, getting someone from where they are to where they want to be.
well, see, this is where you and I disagree. You use that same. You thought a coach was an agent. I couldn't disagree with you more. I think a good coach's job is solely should be of the best of the team, not for the player, for the best outcome of the team. And he shouldn't be getting involved in too many emotional situations with what's going on in your life and your home. Yeah, sure, maybe off season, maybe after the season, and maybe later on in life they can be a model, but no, I don't believe a coach job is your agent. The coach's job is what's best for the organization. No different than a somebody that's hiring an employee, right? I
Well,
don't think your boss is a very good mentor or a coach in some cases. I think they can there could be a role to some degree, but they're the agent of the company for the best outcome and
well, I
not
think I think
not
the
tied to the emotional
I think
individuals within that organization, whether it's just, again, sports are kind of it's a different analogy because being on the field, I've had many coaches in my life, and I have to say they're not always the best people for life advice. So I think what we're talking about is a life agent. That's kind of a whole different category or a business agent is another example of that.
Well, I think it depends on the circumstances. I think I said before the recording, coaches are not always agents and agents are not always coaches. But you led with a team sports analysis. And what about a personal coach? The personal coach is definitely an agent, definitely a mentor. My boss for 6 years, who helped me learn how to start a company and sell a company in the staffing space, was absolutely my mentor. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I think these things are somewhat circumstantial. So I want to leave a little poetic license, and we can certainly disagree. But
Mhm.
as I think of this, if we're talking about team sports, then I think you're 100% correct. Although
Mhm.
I still know that, like, different coaches are known to be completely impersonal, and others are quite personal and know the players' families. So that to me is a personal choice on behalf of the coach, or maybe even the owner of the organization, to what kind of coach he's going to drop into a role. So I think we're both right.
Yeah, but mentorship is different than an agent. Again, if we go back to the original meaning of an agent, whether it's a real estate agent, whether it's an attorney, it is your best uh, to represent you to get the most value to the market. And now let's get into again the self. So there's many parts of your area, and I also think that the best agents have the best clients, right? I've seen that also. In order to get ask any attorney, the first thing they'll tell you is, or anybody in business in general, right, is having uh, a good client with a good agent makes a nice comment. It's a combination that can be very, very effective. So it's not just being a good agent, and you also you have to learn the subject, understand it, understand the your roles, and then that second person could bring you much further along if you were by yourself, or yeah, we hear also like in legal cases, right? Well, this usually that's the crazy person that's going to represent themselves in a murder trial or something. They don't
Yeah.
normally do very well. Why do you think that is, right?
Well,
It's
again, I think there's one-offs. I keep. It's funny because what we're talking about here is really the differences between your life experience and my life experience, which is great because I
Yeah.
expect all of our clients to have varied life experiences. But as we've said before, we're going to do as much of the work to be successful by qualifying who we're going to mentor, coach, or be an agent on behalf of, because of the point you just made. The best attorneys have the best clients. And that's because good attorneys don't accept bad clients, right? They push them away. And we're going to have some sort of an assessment process. I remember I told you about this other coach that I was talking to a couple of weeks ago. He said one of the qualifications that you have to have in order to be one of my clients is you can't be a jerk, because I'm not gonna be effective with a jerk. You have to be open. You have to be open to suggest. You have to be ready to be helped, right? You can't help somebody who doesn't not yet ready to be helped. We were talking about my younger brother earlier, and he's not ready to be helped yet. So
Right.
there's a lot of moving parts here, and
Yeah, but I think that applies to anybody in demand. If you're, let's just go back to the sports agency analogy, right? If you're a sports agency, you're not going to just take anybody that wants you. There's a demand for your services, so you're going to be selective of who you work with.
mhm.
And I think, like I said, that applies to everything. And it's not that there's something wrong with either party. It's just there has to be an alignment. There has to be a fit. There has to be some common values. That's what, go back to our five areas of life. If your worldview versus your health versus your profession, your relationship, if those things align to begin with, then there's a match. There's a match to help one another excel in whatever that task may be. So
Yep. Yep. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think the notion of agency is, and I said it to you before, during our last 3 or 4 years of talking about these topics and striving to get to a place where we could define how we could help people and who we could help. You have acted as my agent in a couple of situations where I was either in a negotiation or I had a problem come up and I wanted your opinion. And you actually stepped back and said, let me act as your agent right now. And
Yeah.
you weren't negotiating something on my behalf, but you were helping me with my own negotiation.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they're
Yeah.
close.
Well, I think you bring up another good point. There's a difference between a friend and an agent, right? A friend, your friends and your family are often too close to some of these decisions. So they don't always give you the best advice. Their intentions are may be very good, but it doesn't mean it's the best advice because either they don't understand the subject or they haven't had those experiences
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
life.
No, I think I told you when 30 some odd years ago, when I started my own company, I was building a home and had a third child on the way, and I decided to quit my job and start my own business. My father thought I was crazy. My
Mm-hmm.
father, he said, "No way, you should do something like that."
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was strictly thinking about my security and my family, and he worked for the same company for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
So his perspective it wasn't wrong. It was just different. It wasn't
Yeah.
for me. So you're right. I think, but what you did when you operated as my agent, what I saw, what I heard
Mm-hmm.
was you said, stop. Let me put my other hat on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me not be your friend for a moment right now. Let me be your agent. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was pretty cool. And that distinction is important because if you can't take off the one hat and put on the other hat, you're not going to make a good agent, you know?
Yeah, and you've done the same for me at times as well. And again, it's also maybe hearing some things you don't want to hear because
That's definitely.
you were either too helpful, maybe a bit naive, or maybe you were afraid to lose something that you've invested so much in, and you're afraid to be wrong.
Well, one of the things that I have always needed is I have a tendency to be too nice.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tendency to be naive's probably a good word, although I don't feel naive about life in general. But I do give people the benefit of the doubt. And in certain circumstances, I've had other people come in and say, I don't think you're seeing what I'm seeing. I don't think this other person is operating in good faith. And as a result of that, I think you should maybe move from here to there. And that's that's an extremely valuable thing to do for somebody else, especially if you're right. But so people that would help me from an agency standpoint would say, okay, I see some things, Mark, that I don't think you're seeing, right? And I think you're clouded either because of your perspective on it or your relation to, or you're too close to it or what have you. And so objectivity is something that a good agent brings to any negotiation or any circumstance.
But let's go on even extreme on the side of, let's talk about a business agent. Another example I used in the past is that he really, it shouldn't be that personal. Maybe a really good business agent may not be a very good guy, or maybe not even have, may not even have to like the guy, but he was hired to do a job and to get the most out of something on your behalf. So I don't think you always have to like somebody either. I think somebody you may have to respect them for what they've accomplished and not what you're paying for. So
Yep.
it doesn't always mean a friendship or somebody that's like you. In some cases,
I agree.
you want somebody the opposite. I'll just use a patent attorney. I've worked with a number of patent attorneys, but recently I had dinner with one of, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, but good guy, really good guy. And but at the end of the day, I want him to be a really good patent attorney to execute my patent. And that's what the whole patent process is, right? I'm the inventor. He is my agent. He is representing me. It's all about the inventor, and he is speaking on my behalf. But he knows all the different angles. He understands the laws. There's all these different things you would never ever know. That's why they're so expensive. $500 an hour. Some of these guys, what they charge and up, right? $500 to $800 an hour. But because they're not emotionally attached to it, and they have to take what you're saying and reinterpret that in a legal way that sets up all types of angles and options. If this doesn't happen, then this will happen. Then we can do this and we can do that. I would never know that, right? And that's
Well,
what
yeah, I think that, the only things that I could maybe think through this further, but right off the top of my head, that I would want out of an agent in the patent space or the divorce attorney or whatever is strong expertise and experience
Mhm.
and integrity,
Yeah,
right? I don't care about their personality. I mean, what
right.
you know what that makes me think about? That makes me think about Donald Trump, right? I mean, that guy got shit done, but he's a dick, you know? I don't care.
Well, what is your definition of integrity?
Yeah, well, I mean, I
Well,
think
it's a loaded question. It's
I
not what
know.
everybody thinks.
Well, you tell me what yours is. I'm my off the top of my head is, doing what you say you're going to do, you
That's
know?
right, but that doesn't mean it's moral at all. It could be
No.
something. I'm gonna murder that person, but that's integrity. He executes it. He murders it. That doesn't mean he should have murdered it. It's not moral at all.
Yeah, no,
Integrity is,
we actually used that analogy in many episodes ago. It's a good one.
yeah,
It's a good conversation. It's a good
yeah, it
conversation.
is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not. It has nothing to do with being moral or being a good person. It's just
Hmm.
somebody that integrity is somebody that is going to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
No.
associate it with doing the right thing, but it doesn't mean that. So
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a very, very, very important distinction.
yeah,
Yeah, and but at the same time, what if you brought um, uh, honesty and integrity and expertise and wisdom, and that's kind of, I would like to think, and you tell me what your take on it is, that when we actually go to market and we attract an initial group of 5 or 10 guys, let's say, just for example purposes, I think the what we're bringing to the table is certainly experience. You and me have a lifetime of experience, and we've also, at our age, we've also addressed many of the challenges that come toward men as they get older, and you like to use there's one life in your 20s and there's a different life in your 30s and then 40s, 50s, and 60s. And we also bring integrity. I think there's no question the two of us can both be trusted. And we both got verifiables on that one, tons of friends and recommendations from other people, ton of experience and wisdom from all those experiences. And so, call it an agent, call it a coach, call it whatever mentor, whatever the word is. It's going to be a combination of all those things in my mind. We won't be negotiating contracts for people, but we certainly might be offering our opinion on who's in the middle of a negotiation, right? So it's a little cloudy, but it gives us flexibility to help in multiple different ways, in my humble opinion.
yeah. I think we have different opinions. Again, exactly the role that it plays. At the end of the day, there's these 5 areas in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it does come back to being self-aware, self-evaluating, and if it's, I don't think it's the agency as much as it is self-agency at a certain point, but you got to do the work, like everything in life,
Mm-hmm.
and very few people want to do the work.
Yep.
But sometimes it's that person, it's that gets you over the line. It's hard to know sometimes whether you're on the 99-yard line or the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
And I think what an agent can do is again, he can step back. He has a bigger perspective, he or she, and give you some sound advice just based on some life experiences. But like everything, you've got to do the work. And I think what we've created is more of a system, a process that's a self-help process that will bring you to a certain point. But we know in advance that that's only going to get you so far. And then it's going to be somebody else that, again, is not emotionally attached to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
Yeah.
interesting, Jim, the some of the other work I'm doing that you're familiar with in the leadership space. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and the first step in this particular line of work for me is kind of an assessment, right? So
Mhm.
I give the people in the client group, there's going to be 10 of them. I give them this program to go through, and it takes a few hours of work, but and it's basically just asks a bunch of questions and makes you think about what you want to be and who you want to
Mhm.
be, and all this self-reflection is what is a good word for the exercise. And the guy I talked to yesterday, when I asked him what he thought about that experience, he's like, I thought about it after I was done. I really enjoyed it. I found it very helpful. Then I thought to myself, this is work I should be doing. I should be doing this on a regular basis, looking in the mirror and self-reflecting and making myself answer these difficult questions. So it was really something that I reflected upon as I need this. I should have been thinking about these things beforehand, but some of these things are difficult to think about. And and the other thing we concluded was, you know, progress is made incrementally. It's not flipping a switch, right?
Mhm.
So when over time you improve when you adapt good habits and you make good adjustments, but then you need to practice those things over time. And when progress is incremental, people tend to give up. So the other function of the agent is to bring perspective, and it's also maybe to hold people accountable. But I think the system can hold people accountable too. If you get someone assessed and into the system, knowing exactly what they're getting into, they're going to hold themselves more accountable. And that's why people don't do things for free. If there's no skin in the game, people don't come back. And one of the things that amazes me about online courses in general is I think the stats are still like 90% of people that buy online courses don't even open them up,
Mhm.
so a lot the rationale behind having an objective third party to help you make big decisions and get out of your own way, it's everywhere. It's clear. The people don't choose to do it because of what you said. Most people don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
you know
But yeah, self accountability, that comes with everything in life. But having somebody to be accountable to also, again, that's that final yard.
yep.
It's the remaining 10% of the 90%. This is where you you need somebody that's to get to the next level. There's a reason why you have a coach, or you have um, people bring you to further than you could go on your own.
Hey,
It's not
the
unique
best
to you.
coach, the best coaches have coaches. Tony Robbins has a coach. He probably has
Sure.
multiple coaches. So that proves the point. The
Yeah.
question is not whether you need a coach or an agent or not. It's a question of whether or not you recognize that,
Yeah.
and you're willing to do the work. Because sometimes people are just they're not at a point in life where they're ready to do the work, but 6 months down the road, something happens, something changes, and now they're ready. So we can't make people ready, but we can help people who are ready.
Well, it's for somebody who wants to be their best self and go to the next level. I think another thing we had to talk about, and we touched on this before we started recording, and that's something it's very sad. It's close to home for you right now, and that's depression. I
Mhm.
experienced it for the first time, and I tell you, it's the worst. You can't even describe it, and I don't at all want to get into the specifics of we're certainly not. Uh, Experts when it comes to depression. Um, but it is a dark road that you go down, and I think the things that we're talking about, and even what we put into this system, will, without question, allow people to avoid getting into that dark place. Sometimes it's just, again, having somebody accountable, but also having a destination. Being optimistic of a better day than tomorrow. And the one that always keeps coming back is, especially as you get later on in life, is you do become less self-aware, and you don't realize how people are reacting to you, because either what you're doing isn't working any longer, or you're not interacting with people. But I do think it's a common thing as later midlife, that you get out of touch. And part of it's the world changes. It's not that you haven't changed. Maybe that's it. You haven't changed, but the world's changed. And that's not all, not by saying not being authentic, not being yourself, but back to evaluation. self-evaluation, self-assessment
Hmm.
to be your best self. It's the world's dynamic. It's always changing.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and we put a lot of thought into that, when we started talking about this a few years ago, right? When we
Yep.
put this on a whiteboard. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just on a coaching call earlier this morning with a career, my other business, the career stuff, and
yeah,
which is gonna be a big part of what we do together. It's just a
sure. Yeah.
subset of our overall skills. But I think the guy said to me like 3 or 4 times, "That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea."
Yeah.
And this is a smart guy. Why was I able to convey great ideas to him? Because of a number of things: my experience, my worldview,
Mhm.
some of the mistakes that I've made. That a lot of what I've done for people over the years is don't do that. I did that. It's a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as
But
we wrap up the call, let's talk about, it's a good time of the year for these conversations, right? That's what I mentioned to you. I like the first week in January because it's like a clean whiteboard, right?
yep.
You can look in the past and look at some things in the past year that you did right, some things that didn't go the way you thought they would, but it is a chance to say, okay, what's good? What am I going to do differently this year to
Hmm.
to be better, but not to repeat a similar mistake, because there are
Hmm.
patterns.
Yep.
And it always helps when you have uh, a system, a process, some structure, a
Yep.
framework that
Hmm.
allows you to get started. And then it's about putting it in your calendar, right? Allocating time and
Hmm.
resources,
Hmm.
time that you said, I'm going to put this in my calendar right now, whether it's working out, whether it's whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, our buddy Troy says it all the time. It's like he encourages the accountability buddy. No money's exchanged. It's just pick somebody in the group that's like-minded or that you enjoy, and just commit to every morning getting your morning routine done and sending a text to your accountability buddy. I got my morning routine done, or I wrote my book for 20 minutes, or I made that very difficult call that I wasn't looking forward to. Whatever it is, the fact that someone is expecting you to report into them raises your own accountability. It's just, again, it's human nature, you know?
yeah, but we'll wrap up this call with two quotes or one, but it's about hope and advice, right?
Hmm.
So the the one that I often share about hope is the only worse than no hope, uh, and that's false hope.
Hmm.
And there's only worse than no advice, and that's bad advice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very cautious of sharing uh, my direction of life with a stranger that I don't know what they did
Hmm.
or where they're at, even mentally.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's fine to pick a stranger. That's cool. You're accountable, but I'm very cautious of who I take in information from, unless it's back to this, no different than an attorney or a real estate agent or any other agent, right? I want to know that if I'm going to ask for advice, that person, it's good advice, because again, there's only worse than no advice, and that's bad advice. Bad
No,
advice can sit you down a road that you'll never, ever, ever be able to turn around and come back to.
well,
Um,
I think it's part of what makes us unique, and that is exactly that. We have a tremendous level of responsibility around just what you're talking about. And I don't ever give out advice until I understand exactly who I'm dealing with, right? And that's why qualifying clients and inviting only the clients in who we know we can help and who are ready to be helped, that keeps bad advice from coming. Because if you don't ask questions first, then you're making assumptions, and that's where bad
yeah.
advice comes
Yeah.
from.
I guess I was going back to the suggestion of just find anybody and ask them to be accountable. I don't want anybody to be
Yeah,
accountable to.
yeah,
I want somebody that I know is either accomplished something or holds a standard equal or
yeah.
higher than mine.
I think that maybe I just left out I made an assumption, and that was when Troy said just pick somebody. These are people that have been communing in groups for months at a time, everyone has insight into the other's background. Some have had conversations together. Some have already become friends. So
Yeah.
they're not strangers.
They're not.
There's,
No, and you have a common set of values, right?
yes,
You've already, you're right.
yes,
They've already demonstrated who they are by being part of that community. So I think
hmm
what you said is a really great example of that, right? There is community, there's peoples that you can that are they're vetted, that they're there for a reason, and those are the
hmm
best people to take advice from, not just strangers.
No, I agree completely. I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah,
yeah,
glad you did.
I agree 100%. And that's also part of our vision is to have a community, and it works out well that we have our podcast name has the word club in it
Yeah.
because that's what it's going to become. It's going to become a
Yeah,
club.
and it also has the word imperfect, and
Yeah,
glad you mentioned that because the imperfection is the perfection, and that's how we came up with the name, the Imperfect Men's Club, because
yeah,
we're all imperfect and we're
yeah.
striving to be better, but there's no such thing as perfection. In fact, the imperfection is the perfection, and I think that's a great way to wrap this one up for
Yeah,
the
I think it's direct connection to the word authentic.
yeah,
Authenticity is
yeah,
you show your imperfections when you're authentic, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So, all right, Jim, I enjoyed it.
yeah. Same here. Happy New Year
Okay,
to you.
you too.